Hi, I'm Dr. Gemma, and welcome back to Cognitive, the Knitting Psychology podcast. Cheerfully and somewhat irregularly in business since 2008. Segments today may include what's on my hooks, needles, and spindles, a strategy, something I really like, put a lid on it, oh shoot, and blather. So sit back, put your feet up, pick up your knitting, crocheting, spinning, weaving, or dyeing, or any other yarny thing you're doing, and get ready to enjoy. Well, hello, it's Dr. Gemma, and this is episode 222 of the new series of the Cognitive Podcast. And happy March by the time you hear this, I suspect. Your comments are very welcome. Please feel free to comment on the blog at cognitivepodcast.blogspot.com or on our group on Ravelry. In the warm thanks department, as always, I want to thank my whole community, my listeners here, my listeners on Reddit, and on the ground in the Santa Clarita Valley. And this week, as you can tell if you heard the mini episode, it's kind of Kindle Crunch week. And I'll probably talk about that later, but I wanted to thank all the people who reached out to tell me about what's going on with Kindle, and I do not remember all their names. I also want to identify with our own beautiful Christina, alias Chris who is sharing my Kindle insecurities. What happens if your old Kindles go out? Yeah, that's why I'm downloading today, and I'll come back to that. And also, I want to just give a heads up to our own Danny Mac, because we had a good long talk yesterday. We talk to each other about once a month. And I think I always get on thinking, well, we've got about half an hour to talk to each other. And then it goes on and on because we both have so much to say to each other. I enjoy your wavelength. I can't talk today. I enjoy your wavelength, Danny. I really do. And thank you so much for all the help. Really made a big, big difference. In the meantime, you may be wondering, what is on my hooks and needles? Well, yes, it's finished at February, and I did. I finished February 25. Oh my gosh, another success. There's a lot to be said for making enough sweaters to the point where you know what your needle size should be. You know pretty much what the stitch count around the broadest part of your body is going to be. And everything gets a lot easier when you're trying to select sizes for making a sweater. It's really just down to gauge. So anyway, I finished February 25. This is the top-down vest from Petite Knit. It looks a little short in that picture because I hadn't blocked it yet. It blocked perfectly to size. Really humbling. I've been wearing it all week. So this is hand spun. And it is primarily, about 99.5%, it is the Morro Bay Merino. I think it's a super fine. And it just spun beautifully. And then, I believe I had a gift from Lexicon from years ago that was a prize-winning sheep. I had a piece of that fleece. I had like an ounce of it. And I think that's the whiter spots in there. But then I was running low, and when I was plying, I realized I wasn't going to have enough to get a full vest. So I had a good look at what's on my drop spindles, and I ended up spinning in to a 3-ply. Against 2 plies of the Merino, I spun in a ply of Eleanor. And then I spun in a lot of Minerva as a single ply. And so I think I talked about this before. I don't want to get too repetitious. But I just decided it should go down by the hips. And the darker it is, the more the viewer is going to look at it. So I put that down in the ribbing. And I did a fade pattern. Now, you can't tell when you look at that picture. You can't even tell when you look at the sweater. It's because the Eleanor fluff is very fluffy. It's like an Angora. And so it stands out a little bit. And it colors the yarn more towards gray than towards its natural oatmeal. And then below that, the Minerva spun makes it look black and white. And it worked out great. What I did Eleanor first, then I did the Minerva. The Minerva spun is much smoother. doesn't have the guard hairs and the fuzz that the collie hair does. And it looks like it was meant to look this way. It looks really good. I'm kind of pleased with myself. Again, when I work on these projects, there's a lot of hope that I'm going to learn things as I go, and I'm going to experiment and try new things. And that is the huge advantage, both of the Romuel sweater, where I'm trying to use leftovers and scraps, and of the vestuaries, where I'm just trying to learn to do slightly more challenging patterns. Vests can be a lot harder than pullover sweaters, because if you do a top-down sweater, it's all one piece. Your biggest issue is just clumsiness, and then what you make the sweater out of. Like if you decide you want to do Fair Isle or Intarsia or Entrelac, or if you decide that you want to use scraps, you never quite know what you're going to get if you start experimenting. But it is great because the more you do this kind of thing, the more confident you get, and the better you get at really guessing what's going to work. Now, I believe Petite Knit recommended that this vest be done on size 9 needles. No way. No way. And she was coming up with measurements that for me were easily based on a size 7 needle. And I had the same experience with the Romuel sweater with the Sweetheart. She was saying size 8s. That didn't make me as nervous. I know when I do a sweater, a pullover, it really has to be size 7s with size 4 yarn, with worsted weight yarn. And I guess I knit more loosely than the rest of you. I wouldn't think I do. But I learned that from Megan Regan of Bad Wolf Girl Knits. I got to say this slowly. That she does all her sweaters, she says, in DK weight and size 7 needles. I tend to do them in worsted weight, size 4 and size 7 needles. And I get what I want. Anyway, so Vestuary 24 and Vestuary 25 are now both done, as well as the Romuel. So that means I have to start sweatering. Now this is Finish It February, so I went into my projects list on Ravelry and looked at the projects that are unfinished and that are even unstarted but are in the queue because I really want to do them. So I'm going to come back to that in a second, but I do want to tell you the stash toss now is at 17 skeins in and 14 skeins out. So I am pretty happy about that. And Finish It February, well, we've got about another week, slightly under a week as I record this. And meanwhile, as I've been finishing things, I've been coming across things that are unfinished and need mending. And I should say, they actually are finished projects, but they have holes or things have gone wrong or stitches have broken. So I have a feeling March is about to become Mending March. I have really never done anything quite this way. I did have a Romuel a couple of years ago where I just was doing mending the whole Romuel. Boy, is it satisfying. So I'm hoping to do a Mending March. Meanwhile, thanks to the conversation with Danny, I advanced on the foot of the first Blueberry Waffle sock, which really got put to the side because I was doing a lot of popcorn knitting on the various vests and the Romuel sweater. And the Blueberry Waffle socks, I decided to do the leg in the waffle pattern, but I decided to do the feet, the insteps, as it were, in just regular stockinette because I was getting tired of doing so much pattern work when I was working on the yoke of the Romuel sweater, the Sweetheart yoke. I just felt like, I need more popcorn knitting. Fortunately, I got a lot of that on the bottom half of Vestuary 25. At any rate, I did get back to the Blue Iris socks, and I'm enjoying them. Those are in Blue Iris is the colorway. This is Ba La Jolla yarn, and the pattern, of course, is the Immortal Blueberry Waffle socks, which I can't recommend enough. Haven't touched the 10 square bag, did pick it up and look at it. Same with the Lakeside cardigan. But I did start a new project that was already listed among my projects, and that is the September sweater. This is a crocheted sweater. It's 2 big panels, and then you attach 2 tubes as arms. This couldn't be easier. Takes a huge amount of yarn. I have to say I have some problems with the way this is written. When they give you the measurements for gauge, you're making these big rectangles, and you're starting on the long side and working towards a long block, and you will make the short side obviously shorter than the long side. And they give you in the gauge measurements how many rows should take you to, I think it's like 12 rows or something, how many inches and all this. What they don't give you is how long from tail over the shoulder to bottom front the piece should be. Now, to get a 40-inch chest or more, I had to chain 225 using an H hook. Okay, and I thought, maybe I should take this to a G hook, but I did it in an H hook. I got gauge measuring along the short side. Very nice gauge. However, this would have been a tunic with the 225 chains to start. I mean, it was hugely long on me, and it shouldn't have been. I was on gauge. And I looked at it and said, the fabric is okay. I might like it a little more tight, but I'm thinking blocking is going to make this yarn swell. Okay, I had to make the starting chain much shorter. I had gotten the block about 6 inches wide out of 11 and just realized I'm going to run out of yarn. I can't make this tunic unless it's going to be a sleeveless tunic and be something totally different than what I think it's supposed to be. Now, I've got 2,250 yards of this yarn. I'm supposed to only need 1,800. Yeah, there was no way. So I ripped that huge project out and I started over, and I'm doing fine with it. It really is popcorn crochet. I really have to look at it. I can't converse with somebody on the phone when I'm working on it, but I can edit the podcast, although I did a little bit messy of a job on 220, I found, and that was when I was starting it. Okay, but this is the September sweater. I give you a link in the show notes. This yarn is gorgeous. This yarn is from 2010. It is the old Lorna's Laces, and I bought it from one of the bigger companies, not a big box company. The point was, at that time, Lorna's Laces was having some quality control issues. It became very famous at the time, and now this is 15 years ago, so if you don't remember this, no big surprise. And this yarn reflects that, to put it politely. And so I looked at it and said, do I want to just heave-ho? Said, no, it really is gorgeous stuff. And I don't think this is the fault of the vendor who sold it to me, which is why I'm not saying their name. I think they did absolutely nothing wrong. This came out after I bought the yarn, that there was a lot of Lorna's Laces at the time that had problems. So anyway, I'm pushing my way through it because it is so easy and straightforward, and this is probably going to take up, how many skeins have I got? Like 15 skeins. So that should take care of the stash toss, eh? But I'd like to make this sweater because really, I don't care that much about this yarn, but I'm kind of sampling it. The sweater design looks very flattering on the model, and if I can get this one to work, this would be a very nice go-to sweater for crochet, as opposed to my go-to for knit is a toss-up between anything by Megan Regan and the good old-fashioned brick. And this one, I think, is going to go the same direction as this could be my go-to. My go-to cardigan already, I have to tell you, is crochet, and that is the Wrapped in Tiny Chains. That is so easy, and every time I wear it, people just go, oh my God, that's so wonderful. It's moronically easy. It's just rectangles, but it just looks like one of these droopy kind of old school varsity sweater types of things. Anyway, so this is the September sweater. It's beautiful. This is a short repeat in terms of color in the yarn, and the crocheting is handling that beautifully. I don't think I'd want to knit this. I did try to. I've got what looks like a yarn sock that I knitted. I don't know what I was trying to make, and I stopped the project and pulled it out and left it. It looks like the ribbing at the top of a sock, but I know I wasn't making socks with it. And it's very funny because I'm using it as a yarn sock for the wound balls of yarn. And this yarn is put up in really low numbers. It's like 150 yards per skein. So I got a lot of it. And I just remember walking up to the shop at Stitches and going, how much of this would I need to knit a sweater? And they gave me this huge number, and I must have been quite heavy at the time. And I was like, okay, and I bought it all. And I'm glad, But, too bad about the problems with it. Speaking of crocheting, as I sit here, I am wearing one of my crocheted vests. You may remember a few years ago I went crazy when Lion brand yarn came out with Mandala. And I think these are, I can't remember if they're sport or DK. I think they're DK weight. And these insanely beautiful stripes. And I just bought these things because I couldn't stand the color. I love them so much. And made these simple striped vests where you start at the bottom front hip and you go right over the shoulders, go down the back. I've got about 4 of these, and this is the perfect weather for it because today's weather is varying between 50 degrees and 70 degrees here in the desert. So I want to say, yes, I do wear crocheted sweaters. You don't hear about it that much. Generally, I prefer the hand of knitted sweaters. However, there is an exception. There's a few exceptions. One, anything Lexicon makes, because she has really mastered going to the proper yarn size. Most crocheted sweaters use yarn that's too heavy. And Lex really has the gift for picking out the right yarn and just makes these amazing, beautiful sweaters that are also incredibly versatile. I'm just saying this because her sweaters are fabulous. She uses Tunisian crochet most of the time, which I'm just not comfortable enough with, but I admire it. I've started doing it, you may remember, for the bag handle at last year's CFR, and that's a story I won't go off on. But I have to say, every now and then crochet just fits the bill. And it lets you play with yarns to get a very rapid output that you can enjoy. And I'm wearing that right now. All right. Meanwhile, back at the quilt squares, I'm still working on 10 squares. I haven't really done much work on them this week. I just took a break from the quilting. I did get my sewing machine to work delightfully. I got the thread path cleared out and all that, whatever that problem was. So that's going very, very nicely. And I did recently buy a huge package of bobbins. I keep telling myself I'm going to stop sewing now. But no. All right, because I have so much scrap in. Then there was that trip to Joann's this week. Meanwhile, Dizzy Blondes. I am still spinning that first 4-ounce braid of the Black Bowie Shadow, which is BFL, from Lisa Souza. And to celebrate on the 28th of February, I'm probably going to order more from her, frankly. I'll come back to that too. Meanwhile, all of the spinning I'm doing, I'm using the Electric Eel 6.1, and I talked about that in previous episodes. It's going pretty well. You can't really fill a bobbin on the EEW. That what happens there is the motor isn't powerful enough, so you can get through about 3/4 or 2/3 of a bobbin, and I still don't mind. That by the time I'm finished and I get 3 bobbins and I ply it, I get a good 200 yards of a triple ply, nicely rounded, everything works. That's my only thing about it, but I'm very happy using my EEWs. And so that's where we are. Not too much in the spinning either, because I really kicked butt on the sweaters this week. So that should take us to a strategy, shall we? Yes, let's. Okay. Well, I'm going to start with the Kindle thing and then go on to an actual strategy. That, of course, we've been hearing, if you're on the internet at all, about the changes Amazon is making in their policy towards Kindle digital content. And I really was trying to figure it out because you know me, I'm fond of my Kindles. And to me, it's always been pretty clear that they could do a clawback of a book, anything that gets banned, anything they want to edit. I've been told they have done that. I would not know. I have not seen that. That doesn't mean it hasn't happened. But I don't feel a big need to get crazy about this. Okay, and I talked about that yesterday because I gathered all the information I could, and I got very, very lucky on that. I ran into a few real expert people. And so I decided to go back into my Kindle digital content and to actually say, should I download it in the format that does not have the heavy DRM stuff on it? Because I have it all on Kindles. I have the 5 Kindles. The only thing I'm worried about is, well, okay, there's 2 things. First is, what if my Kindles crash? I have one Kindle that is very old, easily from 2009, I think. And its connector for the charger, the hardware, is starting to deteriorate. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is keeping track of everything I've got across the 5 Kindles. And so I thought that alone means I am going to go in and I am going to download all my Kindle content because I want to have it all. And I want to distribute it across the Kindles. Now, the interesting thing here is, of course, I'm still buying things on Kindle and on digital. So, I have all of that I can transfer. It's about 1,200 books. That does not include Audible. That does not include my documents. They are separate issues that I'm not going to go into. Audible, you can't download through the USB cable anyway. I was experimenting with this yesterday, and that's fine. So I'll always be saving my Audible the way they want me to. I don't mind. You have the Audible players on all the computers. You can also store Audible files on your Kindles, on the newer editions, the more expensive Paperwhites, and you can Bluetooth a speaker to them. So I'm not worrying a whole lot about Audible. I got better things to worry about. But there's the 1,200 books. And so I did start downloading them. And it was really good. Where am I now? I'm at about 650. That is, I have reviewed 650. I have not chosen to download all of them. A good number of them are my husband's, and we have somewhat different taste. But I have been doing it because I just want to make sure that I get the whole thing. And again, I'm backing it up to the 4T drive. And by the way, it's taking absolutely no room on the 4T drive. It's really scary, 600 something books. And it's like, nope, that's nothing. So that's very nice. And what that does for me is I can now go to those files on the 4T drive, and I can empty my Kindles of all books. I can leave the docs alone. I can leave the Audibles alone. But I can empty them of books, and then I can send books in a more organized way over to the Kindles. Will I do this? Probably not. Not at least until I'm retired. Now, the other thing I worry about, and Beautiful Christina or Chris pointed this out, said, what if your old Kindles break down? I'm much older than you, Chris. I'm probably twice your age, in fact. I don't think I have that many years to go that I'm that worried about that. But, the oldest one is, if it's 2009, do the math, man, that's a lot of, 16 years old, and it's doing fine. But you're right, the hardware connection is corroding, the charging connection. And all I can say to that is I'm not expecting Amazon to go under in my lifetime. So I will probably always be able to relocate stuff to new Kindles if I need to. And Amazon keeps their prices pretty low at this point. So I'm not going to let myself worry about that. There is another solution, a thing called the Kobo. And I'm not going down that rabbit hole, but you can download all the AZW files to a Kobo if you want to, using I believe it is the translation app called Calib, C-A-L-I-B, as in boy, R-E. Not E-R, R-E. So there are other solutions out there. I mean, I can't guarantee this is always going to be perfect, but I decided to make sure that I'm getting all my books that I want. So that's why I'm bothering to do all the downloading. I am sorting as I download. I am saying I don't want this. I do want this. Well, maybe I'll take this. Anything that's even vaguely a question, I'm saving. And it goes very quickly. You have to do it one book at a time, which is a bit of a downer. They really should have made a bulk download option, but since they're taking the whole thing away, too late now. I have to say, too, I do not think Amazon is violating any rights. They have always been clear about this. I don't think they made it as visible in the good old days, but we always knew this. When they started selling digital content, it was out there that you don't own this. And once you buy digital content and you're connected to the internet, you always have the risk that something's going to go wrong there, whether it's a bug in your Kindle or whether it's Amazon reaching into your Kindle. So frankly, my thing is I have 3 of my Kindles are full. I'm working on filling the other 2. I only ever have 1 Kindle reader attached to the internet at a time. I don't really think they're going to claw it back, but I just don't trust other problems that can pop up that I haven't even thought of. And my attitude is get it all on your Kindles, disconnect them from the internet, and use them as your personal traveling libraries. And that's it. I'll probably spend my twilight years trying to catalog where every book is on my various Kindles. ironically, you can connect the Kindle. If your Kindle is connected, the Amazon digital content page associated with your account will read that it's on the Kindle, and it will tell you it's on that Kindle. You name your Kindles. So that's all possible. Okay, but I'm not getting my knickers in a twist over this, but because I have such an extensive library, and because I can't tell if I got it all onto the Kindles, I am downloading it all. And from there, after the 26th, okay, what I buy, and it goes on my Kindles. That's all I can say. And to me, this is a kind of non-problem because I believe in the Kindle platform. I haven't had problems with it. I'm looking at the Kindles group over on Reddit, the subreddit called Kindle, or Kindles, I forget which. And then it's pretty evenly divided, who's having problems and who isn't. So that's, I hope, the end of me talking about the Kindle stuff. Meanwhile, let's get on to a real strategy, and that's going to be cherish the small moments. And I am saying this in the face of the overwhelm going on in my native country right now. And I don't have a lot of solutions for that, except the ones everybody's probably heard if they're looking for those solutions. But one of the things that is coming back to me is, one, how repetitive I've been in previous episodes recently, and I thank you for your patience. But two, they're supposed to be overwhelming us. That is part of the game plan. And okay, fine, sure, whatever. But meanwhile, you have to keep pulling yourself back. And one of the ways you do that is to relocate your attention onto the small things. And I had that brought home to me forcibly yesterday. These people walked up to our door, and they just realized by the time they got there, they were at the wrong place. Like, everything clearly looked wrong to them. They said, "Oh, we're looking for this totally different address." And it's like, our address is on the front fence. You didn't notice this at the front entry on the driveway? But whatever they were doing, it was a younger woman, and she had a very old woman with her, and they were not native English speakers. And the old woman came up to me and started speaking in Spanish. Now, I walked outside. My husband said, "Oh, they got the wrong house." And I said, no, if they're lost, let's help them. So I walked outside, and the old woman came up to me and started speaking to me really rapidly in Spanish. And she didn't know me, and I realized she wasn't saying what I would expect. I am fluent enough in Spanish. It took me a minute to get her pace, and I realized she's rambling. But I began to realize she was rambling in this really kind way. She got that I came out the door and I was saying, "Do you need help?" in English. "Can I help you? Do you know where you're going? Are you guys lost?" And she got it, and her daughter got embarrassed and said to me in English, "Oh, she's demented." And I said, "Yeah." And she said, she's blessing you. But she actually was. And I looked at her and I said in Spanish, "You're very kind. Thank you very much." And she looked startled. And she looked back at me, and I will not tell you what she said. It's a very personal thing, but it was shockingly powerful at the right moment. And I boggled at her and I said, "Oh, usted es muy amable." And she, "You're very kind." And she laughed and she hugged me. And the daughter said, "Is that okay?" And meanwhile, the husband's out in the driveway holding a little kid. And I said, no, she's okay. Leave her alone. She's okay. And so, we sent them off, and I walked in and I thought, wow, that was just this crazy gift from the universe, what she said to me. That was the right words at the right time. And it suddenly brought home to me that these small moments have to be accounted for. You have to keep paying attention to them. You have to accept the goodness and the sweetness. And it's really easy not to pay attention to them. I say this, Minerva just crawled into my lap. And I don't know if we have a purr going. Are you purring yet? No, we don't have a purr going. I was hoping she would purr for you into the microphone. Oh, she's kneading into my leg. Hopefully we'll get a purr going. But anyway, this is a small moment in itself and unto itself. And I keep catching small moments since I spoke with that woman. And I am just stunned at, I don't know what to call it, the translucent beauty of my everyday. And it's a good reminder that you have to keep coming back to that. You have to keep saying the good in the world is beautiful and it's all around us. And you can't overlook it. And you can't get jaded on it And you have to try to keep seeing those small, small good moments. And I guess that's one of the key concepts right now. Things are kind of strange in the world right now. And holding on to the small is a beautiful thing. So I'm reading a lot of books, and I'm knitting a lot, and I'm playing with my pets, and I'm backing up the internet. And I'm trying to cherish those small moments. I will have more of them when I edit this podcast this evening after talking to the wonderful Quantum Quadrat tonight, because we have our 2-week appointment when we talk to each other. And I will get to knit while I talk to Carla, and I will get to knit and crochet while I edit this. And this is why we do the crafting. It is those small moments. I hope it is. It's that quiet. It's that peace we create. And of course, I will say as a psychologist, remember when you use both hands to do slightly independent of each other actions, you do calm the amygdala of the brain. The amygdala is your smoke detector. In other words, yes, you soothe trauma and you calm the brain by doing exactly what I am saying. And so, yes, you can come at it in this pragmatic way. Oh, I'm going to calm my amygdala. I'm sure you all think that whenever you're having a bad day. I should calm my amygdala. Probably you don't. That was sarcasm. Okay, at my own expense. But it is really good to say that cherishing the small and the everyday and the simple beauty is really good for humans. It is physiologically very good for us. In the meantime, still in the strategy section, you will see the websites for the credit freeze and the Social Security admin if you're in America, because I really want you to think about these things. And then we get on to offshoot. Well, this morning I ran the Mardi Gras Madness race. This is for the local running programs at local high schools. And it was an interesting experience. This is one of those things, they have hideously ugly t-shirts and logos, and they did not let me down, although the t-shirt was a little more tasteful this time, and it's a running shirt, so I can sweat all over it without guilt. And I'm always missing it. Now, I have gone to it a few times. I can remember going to it. But number one, I forgot to tell them that, so I did not get the prize, whatever it was, if you were a legacy person. And I don't know what it was. I'm sure it was something I couldn't eat, but felt a little bad about that. However, in the beginning of the race, I had a novel experience. So we had what I like to think of fondly as Barbie in spandex. They got somebody out to do the warm-up, and she was a 40-something mom, and she's like, everybody bounce, everybody do this, everybody do that. She was going through the warm-up far too quickly that I have to tell you, you don't stretch fast. But she was. She was doing this kind of aerobic sort of bounce thing. And when she told us to bounce up and down, I did that. And how can I explain this? Two parts of my frontal posterior bounced too high and hit me. And I've never had this experience. I have heard of this in jokes among other women, particularly endowed women. Never happened to me before. Happened to me today. Quite a weird experience. A little hard to do. I thought perhaps bouncing is something that should be limited to the younger runners who are not as developed in the frontal posterior as I am. Frontal exterior. I shouldn't say posterior. Frontal exterior. I'm trying too hard here. Okay. But anyway, that was different. And I do remember a colleague years ago in my 30s where she was always saying, oh, I wish I could run like you. And I said, you can. And she said, no, I'm too endowed. And I said, we have bras for that. And she said, you don't understand. Apparently I didn't. I must say I do now. No more bouncing in those early morning overly hyper aerobics. So I went out and I ran the race. And I really didn't want to do it. And early on I found this guy with 2 walking sticks about my own age. And he was just walking extremely quickly using his 2 sticks. He didn't really need the sticks. But when he was walking fast, frankly, he was almost as quick as I was running. And this became important to me because I realized after about 2.25 miles out of the 3.1, he was starting to suffer. And so I kept passing him, and I'd say, you're going as fast as I am, and you're only walking, right? And he goes, well, I need sticks. And he felt really guilty and was kind of making excuses, and I felt bad for him. And I would run intervals. So I was doing 10-minute intervals with 1 minute off in between. I was following an interval program, my 10K program, one of them on my phone, listening to music. And it was a very loud race. Everybody was chatting away and having a good time. But I was up with the runners. I did respectably, I think. I'm not sure what my time was. But it was pretty reasonable with where I've been for the last year. So that all was going very well. But towards the end, you start coming on these concrete hills that lead up to bridges that are overpasses over very busy roads. And I realized he was going to have problems with those. And he gave me something to think about. So we were always with each other. And he was actually setting a pace that was pretty good for me. So I finally started to do what I think of as pacing him. That is, I stayed behind him or with him and let him keep the pace. And when I realized he was having problems, I actually started talking to him and chatting to kind of keep him going. He didn't know the course. I did. This is the course they used to use for the Santa Clarita Marathon 5K many years ago when it used to be run before the quarantine. They were running the route backwards, but it was the same route, which was nice, except wrong direction. Too hard at the end because of these long concrete bridges. So I talked him over the bridges and kept him going. And it was a lot of fun because at the end I said, you need to understand that I'm pacing with you. Your pace is perfect for me, so I am not going to run in ahead of you just because you have the sticks. And he said, no. And he wanted me to run across the line with him, which I thought was endearing, and I did. And, he had bursitis, he had meniscus problems in both knees. I said, you don't even belong out here. He said, I'm trying to convince my kids that you can keep doing things even when you're older. I said, how old are you? He said, I'm 60. So I'm 64. And I looked at him and I had that understanding you have to develop, which is, there but for the grace of God go I. The only difference between us is he just had worse luck with his knees than I did. I mean, I could probably trace it to issues with his shoes or whatever, or not tracking its miles. But at the end of the day, anybody can make mistakes in a long career of running. And we are the generation where we actually didn't know what we were doing. That the technology of running wasn't very well developed in our early years. You'd never believe what I was running in and on in terms of shoes in my 20s. Just unreal. So anyway, the guy with the sticks helped me cross the line. When I get the pictures, I'll post them. I think they have free pictures on this. So what happens next? Oh, I have the Rock and Shamrock next month. And that got rather funny. That's on March 16th. And I have to tell you, this is a Better World Running. They contacted me this week and said, we gave you a ribbon with 15K attached to your medal, didn't we? I said, yeah. They said, send it back. We'll give you a 5K. I said, don't worry about it. I mean, what are they going to do with them? Well, probably good for next year. No, send it back. And I said, this is a waste of your time. I don't care. I got my ribbon. They're like, okay, we'll bring it to the Rock and Shamrock. You're signed up, right? Yeah, I'm signed up. So hopefully I will get my proper ribbon from the Cupid Dash attached to my medal. And hopefully I'll be doing the Rock and Shamrock on Sunday, March 16th. Nice course. The course, they keep using the same course, and I'm very, very happy with that. It's a very pleasant course. It's an okay course. It's not the best of our local courses, but it's really good enough. And I got a little race happy late last night and started signing up for things. So I've got a few things going on here. I have the Forever Brave 5K on May 25th, the Sugar Daddy on June 14th, the Red, White, and Blue on July 6th, early morning, the Jeepers Creepers on October 19th, and the Santa Clarita Marathon 5K on November 9th. There are a lot of other good local races. There's one up in Leona Valley, which is kind of on the other side of the Sierra Pelona from us. There's a bunch of other good ones coming up. There's a real shortage of them, as you can probably hear, in April and May. I am not sure why. I think it's because people haven't really started getting fit enough at that point that people winter over and then start their 5 and 10K schedules over again about now, as I'm doing. So anyway, it went very well today, and you can see my schedule for the upcoming, although I have to put them more in a chronological order that normal humans would recognize, I see. And the nicest thing was I brought my very tight knee brace, and that really made a difference. I had a little bit of difficulty with the tendon on the inside of my right knee, but I did not have any problems on my left side because I didn't start running funny in the middle of the run. And I'm feeling pretty good right now. I'm just tired because I didn't get enough sleep last night, but that's actually going to work to my advantage tonight. In the fluffy books, I am still reading the Moomin Tales, and I should probably give you the proper name for that. Tales from Moomin Valley. Tales from Moomin Valley. And I have to say, I'm reading them slowly because they're very thoughtful and intelligent, and I am really stunned by the insight in every single story. They are very, very sweet little episodes, and each of them makes a point about the way people behave, sometimes quite irrationally, but it's all done with a great deal of kindness and generosity of spirit. And I really have to say, I'm just so in love with the Moomins. Georgette Heyer. Well, I finished A Lady of Quality, which I may have told you already, and I liked it. I couldn't put it down. I can't explain why. I didn't love it. It doesn't have the humor, but I liked it, and it was just very interesting how this was going to work out. Then I went on to Venetia, and I really liked Venetia. Now, Venetia, that one took me a while. Who the heck is Venetia? And I wasn't getting anywhere trying to figure out where she got the name. Now, it's a derivative of the Venezia, of the city of Venice. So I'm thinking that's got to be very 17th century, and it's got to be a literary reference. Finally, in the middle of the book, fortunately, Heyer tells you it's from Ben Jonson, who was the first poet laureate of Britain, a contemporary of Shakespeare's. I'm a fan of Jonson. His plays are very hard to take. You don't tend to see them as often as you see Shakespeare's. They're bitterly funny and very, very challenging, very intellectual. And that's who Jonson was. Very, very wonderful, brilliant man. And Venetia is actually referring to the wife of Sir Kenelm Digby. It's Lady Venetia. Well, I should say it's Venetia Lady Digby, to get it correct. And Venetia historically is an interesting character, as is Kenelm Digby. He's a kind of fascinating jack of all trades intellectually, and so is she. He's associated with the court of James and his son Charles. And Venetia and Kenelm fall in love when they're both fairly young. Kenelm goes off to, I think, a diplomatic mission. He may go off to war and then diplomacy. At any rate, they get the news in Britain that he's dead. Venetia, quite scandalously, has some affair. She's not married. And Kenelm comes back. Everybody's surprised. Venetia says, well, I wouldn't have done it if I'd known you were alive. It's recorded that she said that, quite publicly. And people said to Kenelm Digby, well, you can't marry her now. She's going to, kind of soiled. And Digby gives this famous answer that paraphrases as, a virtuous man could take a woman out of a brothel and make her virtuous. While I say this, remember, the court in the 17th century was much more accepting of sexual liaisons outside of marriage, because, of course, their marriages are generally arranged for the sake of politics and wealth. So it isn't all that bad. It's more like this kind of titter behind your gloved hand issue if he marries her. But he does. And they have a very nice life together. And she dies very sadly. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, she dies when she's, I think, 33 or 34. And Sir Kenelm allows for autopsy, which was very unusual in those days. And they find that her brain is corroded. Now, I have a lot of questions about that, but she apparently was dabbling in some weird chemistry and remedies and stuff. And she just dies quietly in her sleep one night. Doesn't seem to have been a violent or unpleasant death, at least as far as history has told us. But anyway, so Venetia as a character is a little bit different. She's a little more risque than the average woman. Her scandals are kind of out there, and she doesn't care, and neither does her husband. That is very suited to this novel. That is very perfect. Now, this is a novel being written, I think, 1940s or 50s, and that audience is not going to accept quite the real behaviors of Venetia Digby. However, it's really a good reference, if you get the reference, which took me a long time to. I quite like the book. You really wonder how they're going to make this work, and it works. It really works. I have moved on to Sprig Muslin, and this is slightly daffy. We have the Georgette Heyer frequent theme of the crazy chick from nowhere who pops in the middle of it. So I'm hoping this means we're in for another really entertaining story. I seem to be enjoying it so far. Something I really like, Sarah Schira's book, The Gnomes of Grimblewood. I mentioned it in my small episode yesterday, the addendum where I talked about the whole Kindle thing. And then I thought, I should actually tell you, I love the book. I love Sarah's gnomes. I met her once, just briefly, when she was first starting the gnome stuff years ago. And I don't think any of us saw how the gnomes would catch on. But they're really clever. They're interesting construction. She gets a lot of challenging and interesting technique into the gnomes. I mean, some of them are very straightforward, stockinette. That's great. If you want to make that kind of gnome, you can. But if you want to try out some weird cabling and some interesting stuff, the gnomes are for you. You can make them in any size yarn. I was using sock yarn scraps to make them. I don't remember what she recommends because I don't think she cares. I think her attitude is just use up your small bits and bobs and get these adorable creatures. I tend to stuff them with lentils, and Minerva bites them. She bites holes in them. So they have to be stored out of her reach, and they are a big part of Mending March, I might add. I rediscovered my original collection from some years back. It's just adorable, and it's loaded with techniques. If you work your way through Sarah's catalog of gnomes, believe me, you are going to learn some really cool stuff, some interesting techniques, some design work that you can use in your own original work. As strange as it sounds, it is highly worthwhile to work your way through the gnomes by Sarah Schira. There's a zillion of them over in Ravelry. And I have to tell you honestly, anything she puts out, I will buy. She did a Fair Isle sweater once a while back with gnome heads. And it was adorable, but I've never gotten around to it. But I got to tell you, past that, when she makes gnomes, I'm going to knit them. I haven't talked about it in a while, but they're really, really great. And there's got to be a place in the knitting world for samplers. Now, I did Jacqueline Fee's wonderful book, The Sweater Workshop, years and years ago, before I started sweaters. And she has you do a sampler, and she has you do everything you can possibly do on a sweater, ribbing and picking up stitches and doing buttonholes. And you get this weird looking thing, but it was worth doing. I don't even know what became of mine. I think it was a dog toy till somebody ate it. The gnomes are the same thing, but in a more evolved way where you get something that's really adorable when you're finished. I can't recommend anything Sarah Schira does enough, and the gnomes are probably what she's always going to be known for, and she just keeps cranking them out, and you can do them in any size yarn you want. Just mess around till you get a fabric that you like. Meanwhile, I'm continuing to carry some of the other links for things I like there, and let's go to put a lid on it. So I got to the tea tastings, and today I have days 23 and 24. In short, I like them both, but let's get to the specifics. Day 23 is chocolate caramel macadamia nut herbal. Okay, now I know what you're saying. Oh yeah, Gemma's going to go on about how she doesn't like nut flavoring in her tea. This is green rooibos honeybush tea, cacao nibs, safflower, orange blossom, chocolate, walnut, and macadamia nut essences. This is an old standby. This has been around a few times before. I like it. I've gotten it when I ordered random samples from the company, or they threw one into a big order, and I believe it was in last year's calendar, and I like it. I don't love it. but I like it. It's a very pleasant tea. It's slightly on the sweet side, doesn't need sugar or any kind of flavoring for me. It can be a little syrupy, and I like that about it. It has a wonderful, wonderful smell. It smells, how does it smell like? I don't even know how to tell you what it smells like. To me, kind of vanilla nutty. I just really like it. It's a very pleasant tea. I'm not going to go out of my way for it, but I'm certainly going to drink it when it pops up in one of these calendars. In other words, overall, it is just a good tea. It is a nice, solid contender, good smell, good taste, nice body, good, even flavor. I would imagine if this was mixed into a black tea, this is probably pretty spectacular, but I won't be doing that. So let's get on to day 24. This is maple custard herbal, and it is green rooibos, red rooibos, apple pieces, rose petals, and then maple and cherimoya essences. In my crazy youth, when I was in Philadelphia for university, we had tea shops, a few of them in fact, in the city limits that blended their own teas. And I used to go get their tea blends and loved them. And one of the things those tea shops always did was apple flavored and apple scented teas. To me, that's what this maple custard herbal is. If I didn't know better, I would say they don't mean custard, they mean costard, which is an older English word for a type of apple. Because to me, no matter what they say is in this, it's the apple that stands out. You smell it and you taste it. And I really liked it. Again, I'm not over the moon about it, but this is another one that I will enjoy drinking the second bag of it. It is, again, naturally fairly sweet, not overboard. I think that is the maple that gives it that. It is very, very pleasant, lovely apple-scented tea. This is a tea for a cold autumnal evening or a snappy winter day. I really like it. Again, I like both of these entries, both the chocolate caramel macadamia nut herbal and the maple custard herbal. The maple custard might also hold up well to black tea. I wouldn't think so. I like my apple-flavored teas to be herbal. But I do think that chocolate caramel macadamia nut herbal, I think that's probably fabulous as a black tea. I just don't drink a lot of black tea, and I have a huge store to get through before I'm going to try ordering any more. But there you go. That is put a lid on it. On to the blather. Well, we got my tires replaced. And when I say we, I mean my husband. He was a trooper. As always, the tires came in early. We pick them up at Costco every time. And he just drove in despite our appointment on the 25th, and he got them done. So we got them done last week. So this weekend I actually had a car, which was really, really nice, both for the race and for other things. For the race yesterday, I had to go in early and pick up my race packet at the mall. And on the way home, I realized I'm passing Joann's. And good old Danny, we were supposed to talk at noon, and I asked her for a delay because I went into Joann's. And I have given myself permission to go there and just pick up what I think I'm going to need. I realized this week I did not buy enough fabric to do the backing for a queen-sized quilt. So I went back and I got more fabric. And the prices are okay. They're not sale prices, although they're claiming they are. But they're okay. I think I was paying $8 a yard for the cotton. That to me is ridiculously high. One of the workers there said Joann's no longer owns the store, that it belongs to the liquidator. And they're trying to make all the money they can, and the employees don't know how long they'll be employed or how long the store will stay open. In the meantime, well, let's just say they were not motivated to save money for their new employer. And it went very, very well. I also picked up a beautiful fabric. There were 3 yards of it. I couldn't contain myself. It was a pale purple background and then had black cats chasing butterflies. I lost my mind. I didn't want to make any more skirts. Well, so much for that plan. I bought a skirt length of it. And that also allowed me to put back the 2 dark blue florals that I had thought would be complementary to the blue I bought last week. And instead I have a plain blue. So I'll do blocks of alternating plain blue and the floral for the back of the quilt that I'm making, the big queen that I'm making. And I got another pre-cut cotton batting for a queen size. They don't have any more of the smaller battings except for really short craft size ones, which I'm not interested in. But I realized, okay, the price was okay, and I should pick up any natural fiber batting I can get when I can get it. So I bought that. And so that went pretty well. I walked out with two 3-foot lengths of the dark blue, a 3-foot cut of the cat pattern, and then one of those queen size batting pre-mades. So that was pretty good. So, I don't think I'm going to keep doing this. I think I've gotten what I need there. Now it's more like, is there anything there that I'm going to have trouble getting later? Now, we will still have Joann's open, relatively near to us, 2 hours in each direction. There will be a Joann's from me. So that's going to turn into an expedition now instead of a pleasure cruise when I'm having a bad weekend. Meanwhile, I am taking March 18th off, which may mean I'll be traveling to one of them for the heck of it. I'm taking it off for no other reason than I'm just tired. And I've decided not to struggle through as I have in the past 2 years, taking no vacation between, January and November. That is too much. It is getting too hard. My caseload has been very, very interesting lately. I'm not sure why. Well, everybody's caseload has been, because I'm consulting with some of the unlicensed people, and they have really challenging cases. So anyway, I will take a day off. I'm taking a Tuesday off because I feel like I've punished my Monday people enough. Meanwhile, I'm still on Blue Sky as Dr. Gemma, DRGEMMA. I've enjoyed meeting y'all over there. And yes, I'm minimizing my time on the Meta platforms. I do have reasons to be there, but they are few and far between. There are some people I can only keep up with there, and I'm living with that. I continue to carry the link for the vaccine information sheets for parents. These are the ones that were scrubs from the CDC website. If they're back there, I haven't gone back and collated to see if it's the real thing. In the meantime, you can see the community resources, the books I have used, my favorite resources to buy from, and these skills and techniques links, plus my link tree, which hopefully I will go in and update. On the calendar, you can see my races upcoming, and you can see all the events taking place related to fiber in the Santa Clarita Valley that I know of. Finally, Minerva gets the last word. Her last word is, I see you. In fact, I see more of you than you realize. I have begun to realize that Minerva interacts with me, with all three humans in the house, in a very responsive way, and she imitates us in some ways. I think the funniest example is when I take a bath. She gets on the side of the bathtub and lies there with me, and she chirps at the birds outside the window. But often she will give herself a pretty thorough bath while I'm lying there. And she has started exploring the water. Today she was batting at my hands in the water. I filled the bathtub quite a lot. It's a deep soaking tub. And she's very intrigued and interested. The other thing she does that cracks me up, she comes to guard me when I'm using the bathroom. And I mean, waste. And she talks to me the whole time, and I realize, I think she figures that people are vulnerable when they do that. And she likes when I do that with her. If she's in the litter box and I sit there and I talk to her, she wants to get on with her business, but she seems to purr and be happy that I'm there. Her other thing is when she's eating, she feels vulnerable. So she tries to lure me to her food dish, and then she'll crouch over the food dish and purr loudly when I'm there. And I will pet her and rub my face against her, and she will purr her brains out. And I realize, again, it's that vulnerability. She talks to all of us constantly. Very, very vocal cat. But she will really talk to us. She's lecturing us sometimes. And I think she is imitating the way she perceives us communicating with each other. Obviously, she can't get the words right. But she seems to think that humans walk up to each other and go, row, 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 row. So she does a lot of that. So Minerva's last word is, I actually see a lot more than you realize. And I would have to say, when I look at Queenie, the dog who opens doors the way humans do, not the way dogs do, I'm beginning to realize how much house pets do imitate us or think they're imitating us. Do with that what you will, but we live in a happy community, with our pets, is what I'm really saying, that we're all interacting with each other. In the meantime, don't forget that you can live in a happy community if you work to make it that way, that we do better in communities than we do on our own. So when you work for the community, you are working for yourself. So on that happy note, please, everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye. So we have come to the end of another episode of Cognitive. Please do not use this podcast to diagnose yourself. If you think you are having a mental health problem, please contact a licensed mental health professional. Show notes for these episodes can be found at cognitivepodcast, all one word, .blogspot.com. Episodes can be found at iTunes under the name Cognitive Podcast, but also can be found posted next to the show notes on the Blogspot page. Thank you so much for listening. Everybody, stay safe, take care of each other, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.